Joining us now is our guy, Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you guys doing?
What's up, Mr. Mensa? How are things? How's it been?
Not bad. Not bad. How you been, DB? It's been a while.
I know I'm hanging in there. I'm curious because I feel like 3 out of the last 6 times I've talked to you, I said, "Hey, what do you think Nebraska should do about Caleb Clark?" But I'm going to ask you a different one. And this isn't just recency bias. It's just because it hasn't been as smooth a sailing, and where his importance is in this staff, whether it's midday or a spot start on the weekend. I'm curious. What do you think the direction is for Drew Christo, if you're Will Bolt?
That's a good question.
He's tricky.
The answer to that, I think, is also influenced quite a bit by what's around him.
Okay.
Right? Because I think, Nebraska has the Saturday stuff figured out, I think, with McConnell. He can at least get you 5 or 6, and that's more than enough on Saturday for this team with the bullpen, the high leverage guys at least.
Yep.
With Christo, it's a matter, I think, of whether you feel like on Sundays he can get you enough depth in the start to, on Sundays sometimes you're bringing a guy back for the second time on the weekend, and you can't be, running your bullpen guys in there in like the 4th inning. And, I think for him, the problem is that there's such a high ceiling, and sometimes it's just tough to get to that ceiling. I mean, his last couple starts, he's, fallen behind a little bit, or the fastball's been a little bit too over the plate. And, he's got a good fastball, but everybody can hit velocity now. And you got to be able to
we just talked about that.
Like, you got to be able to locate it better. I was watching your Dodgers yesterday, Damon.
Yeah.
And
Miller?
the 98 looks great, but it can go back the other way really fast.
You found that out in the first inning, huh? You didn't have to wait too long.
I'll say 98 and straight comes back at you at about 110.
Yeah, and blame BC too, because yesterday morning he goes, yeah, and good luck on the sweep. My Twins are having a hard time scoring. And I was like, yeah, well, if the Dodgers aren't going to score more than 2, you're okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the question, I guess, is whether or not you feel better with Christo on Sundays or Walsh is your guy on Sundays. And, I think you basically know who your 4 starters are now, more than likely. It's just a matter of kind of how you want to line up the back 2, which is Christo and Walsh.
So, Bruntz, if you're kind of evaluating Nebraska here, and, they still have a pretty strong RPI, they'll have a couple opportunities in conference, whether it's Maryland or Ohio State or even Rutgers, that are not, they're pretty solid in terms of opponents.
Folks in Columbus are saying, oh, it's not where we want to be, but it's about time we at least have a pulse.
Yeah.
They showed up on Sunday.
It's amazing. How are they not better? Like how have they not been better since Nebraska's been in the Big Ten?
They've always had just kind of okay guys. I mean, they're always that team that they always underperformed a little bit. They had guys that would show that would kind of pop up in the majors here and there that you're kind of like, oh, I remember him. He was, we saw him for 4 years.
He was fine.
Yeah, he was okay. But I don't know. It's a good question. I think the hire they made was kind of intriguing because they brought guys from power baseball conferences, and they recruit well. Well, they're still pretty young, so we'll see if they can do anything there. But that has always seemed like a school that should probably be a little bit better than what they are, or a little bit more consistent at least. It felt like they were a little volatile with where they would finish in the Big Ten standings.
So Bruntz, let me ask you this: you got a few opponents in the top 50. You've got over half the league in the top 100 currently, so you've got some opportunities for quality wins, or at least not disastrous losses, right? Which I think in the Big Ten is just as important. Is it Is Nebraska's margin of error a little bit bigger this year than maybe we anticipated, or it has been in years past, in terms of you don't have to really wring your hands quite as much about every game you lose within Big Ten play?
Yes. There's still an element, though, of like, there's certain games that you just can't, like they needed to, even Northwestern, when they played them, that was they were 72 in the RPI, which,
and they're like 105 now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of trending the way that you kind of thought they would. But I mean, the tough part for Nebraska is just by virtue of playing baseball, the RPI and the strength of schedule is going to struggle from what it was.
Sure.
And I think people just need to kind of be okay with that. That said, I mean, the next, 10 to 12 games, you've got, let's see, you're going to Rutgers, which I think is better than what they've shown.
50.
You've got K-State in a midweek. You've got Kansas in a midweek. You've got Creighton in a midweek. And you've got Maryland and Iowa. So I mean, this is kind of, you don't want to say, oh, this is the season right here, but I mean, this is a really key stretch of games for this team in terms of where they're going to head, and what the postseason looks like for them. So they've got to get things kind of dialed in here to finish up April, because a lot of the, not marquee, but the games that you would hope that you would win as a potential NCAA tournament team they're right here. So you got to get it in order.
Maybe it's as easy as saying play them both. I don't, after having watched this team so much and knowing both guys, but Nebraska offensively has shown a lot of versatility. What do you think they ultimately land on in terms of how to play Sanderson and Brumbaugh and play to both their strengths at the same time?
Yeah, well, yeah. I asked Will this specifically yesterday if he's been kind of frustrated by the fact that they haven't gotten Sanderson in the lineup more. But I mean, he had an at bat against Kansas the other night that it was like a 7 or 8 pitch at bat.
Oh, I know. Yep.
And it was just like, that's like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old type at bat, not like an 18-year-old kid. And that's how he's been since he showed up on campus. And, I think one thing that's going to help them, Will didn't commit to this yesterday, but I think it's trending that way, is that there's potential that they could get Brumbaugh back in the field in some form or fashion, whether that's in the outfield or at second base. And if you do that, then you all of a sudden free up the designated hitter spot, and you have some place that you can put Sanderson. I mean, they've been willing to put him in the outfield the last few games. He played some first base against Kansas when Stone left the game. So there's options there. But I mean, the easiest way is just for Brumbaugh to get healthy enough to play in the field, and then you put both of them in there, which, I mean, Brumbaugh's been a really nice spark when he's been in there at the top of the lineup. And I mean, they've hit Sanderson leadoff. They've hit him, I think, third and fourth in the lineup. He can kind of do everything. So getting him in the lineup every day would be huge, especially as they've kind of, had some consistency issues with Anglem and Swanson and some of those guys that are, kind of in a platoon right now in the outfield.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntzy, let's change gears here, go to football now. Obviously, media got a little bit of an extended time viewing practice, and maybe not extended time so much as a different look rather than a lot of stretching. You actually got to see a little bit of, football, which is nice. Did you walk away from it with any dramatic declarations you'd like to declare on incredibly small sample sizes?
Not the one that you're talking about. I don't think I want to declare anything there.
Who says I'm trying to lead you anywhere, Bruntz? I'm just asking a question.
You were leading me there. You pulled the chair out for me.
He did. That's what he does. Careful.
I mean, the throws were nice. I mean, that was my takeaway. I don't know that was out of the ordinary for anything that anybody that's seen Danny Kaelin play has seen him do. You win. You don't win the Elite 11 accuracy competition by accident. So that didn't really shock me all that much. Having seen this team, I guess in various forms, for very small windows in the last 2 weeks, The thing that I'm struck by, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I mean, just when you compare where the offensive line is right now from where they were this time last year, maybe not in the way that they perform, but just the number of guys that they have that you can kind of talk yourself into getting on the field.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? I mean,
I completely agree. Ravi dribbled this a couple weeks ago. He goes, how weird is it that we haven't even talked about Mike Mazuka? And a year ago, that would have been a guy that you felt like had to play if he transferred in.
Yeah, and the thing that was interesting to me about the actual 11-on-11 football that we got to see was how different the combinations were that I probably would have expected to be in there. Like the first team that they were using, I mean, you had a redshirt freshman at left tackle, you had Jacob Hood at right tackle, and the interior guys, it was Micah Mazuka and Henry Lutovsky with Justin Evans at center. And it looked okay. Like the picture looked okay there. And then you roll in and you've got Teddy at left tackle. I'm trying to remember who the guards were with that group, but Ben Scott's playing center. You've got Bryce Benhart, who's played, I think, about 75 games as a Nebraska football player at right tackle. I mean, the conversation this time last year was, do we have enough offensive linemen to complete the spring game?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're rolling in, a pretty good two deep of offensive linemen. And by the way, you've got Grant Bricks over there. You've got Gibson Pyle, two freshmen that are on campus that look the part right now, too, to my eye. Sam Sludge is in there, too.
I was saying all the guys that redshirted last year, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of what stood out to me the most, was just like, man, they've really overhauled what they've got going on there. And you're right about Mazuka. I mean, he looks like a guy that started at multiple Power 5 places. Like that's there wasn't much fanfare to that addition, but if that can hit, I mean, that's huge for that offensive line.
How about them getting Jacob Hood back where he's functional and able to move around well? Like,
yeah,
and I get it. Coach Rhule talks about it, but we don't really know because we can't see the practical application of it. But the rest, recovery, rehab portion of his philosophy and getting guys ready to play is so refreshing, because he can buoy that Bruntz against, and we don't think, oh, they're just being lazy, or if a guy loafs or slacks in practice, they're forced to play him anyway because they don't have anybody else, right? There's no, I shouldn't even use his name, but it's not like, they got these guys in the wide receiver room that have been at odds with coaches that they have to play because they're the best players, right? It's like, right. He can say they need rest and recovery and rehab is important, but they're going to get their work in too.
Right. No, and I mean, Hood's an interesting case because from talking to people that covered Georgia, I don't know that there was a lot of expectation that he would, be where he is right now at Nebraska. That's probably the gentle way of putting it.
Yeah.
And he looks a lot different. He'd obviously had a lot of, injury issues at Georgia and early on at Nebraska. And I mean, just him being out there the other day with the group he was out there with, I was kind of like, oh, that was a surprise to me.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntz, earlier we were talking on the other side of the line, the defensive line, and kind of going through some breakdown on that as well. Kind of a similar vibe from last year to this year on that one as well. I think maybe we had a little more confidence in the defensive line, but I think we looked at it and be like, oh man, we're going to need X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that was everybody's concern except for yours.
Yeah, I liked him coming out of the spring, and I don't know why. I probably just kind of a blind squirrel in a nut situation there. But, this is a defensive line that maybe second to the offensive line has had the biggest perception change year over year because of what we saw last year, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
and for different reasons, right? I'm still not sure we love Donnie, but boy, do we love Knighton, and they're both, come heck or high water, and they've both been pretty good.
Yeah, They have been, and it's the defensive line conversation. I mean, people have to remember this time last year. I mean, Nash Hutmaker was not Nash Hutmaker.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of the conversation was, is he ready to take that step? Like, can he have that?
Can we get 30 plays? remember that?
Yeah, I probably said something stupid.
Me
like
too.
That. I'm not.
Hey, I did. Welcome to the Hurrdat Club.
Everybody was hoping that he could just be like senior year Damian Daniels. Probably was what everybody was hoping for, and his emergence has completely changed that room.
And then guys that we thought had to be good, like Elijah Judy, were kind of afterthoughts.
How about Shafe looking like a genius? Remember how much, and because you talked to him more, but how he was banging the drum over Riley Van Poppel in that recruitment, and how he felt like for so long, like Nebraska fans didn't recognize what they potentially could be getting.
Well, it was I'm trying to remember the timeline of everything, but he was one of those guys that committed early and kind of got lost in the wash.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I remember Schaefer and I we did like a 20-minute interview podcast video thing with Van Poppel, and you're kind of like, okay, this guy gets it. Like, and that I feel like is always such an indicator of how much early success a guy has, is like whether or not just like he's like framing things right in his mind about going to college and like what the challenge is. And he just had that. And I mean, he got valuable snaps last year. I think he's going to get a ton out of that year. And, the conversation now with that defensive line in my mind is, you've got a lot of guys that are kind of, not a lot, but a few guys that are more like situational pieces.
Mm.
And if you can get like James Williams, Elijah Judy, and Van Poppel to a degree, I mean, if you can get them to be 3-down players, I mean, that's a really scary group that they've got, that they can kind of use to attack you in different ways. And I'm intrigued by what Ty Robinson can be after. I don't know about you guys. It felt like at the end of the year with him, he was so close to making so many really big plays, and you just wonder if with another year and of experience and whatever he's going to do in the off season, if those kind of almost become plays that he makes.
Bruntz, I asked somebody about this. It was probably one of your Husker 24/7 colleagues, either BC or Shafe. I don't remember. We talked to so many of you guys. But
the big three, man.
But I'm watching those Chasing Three little documentary videos and stuff, and I'm looking at Nash and Ty, and I agree with you. I think Ty was really close to finishing a bunch more big plays last year. I think Nash was the same way. We know the weight loss story with Nash and the wrestling and everything, and he's going to play lighter this year. But I also saw in that episode Ty Robinson, who looked like maybe one of the leanest 300-pounders I've ever seen in my life, walking around in street clothes. I don't know if that's going to translate, but it does have me a little excited.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's, you saw a lot of guys kind of transform themselves last off season, but this is year 2 with this strength staff and the way that they approach things. And there's a few of those guys that are walking around that look completely different. I mean, Teddy looks like he was kind of on the Bryce Benhart trend.
Oh gosh,
last year.
I was messing with him the other day, and he kind of only barely chuckled, so I didn't know if I was funny or not. But man,
gave you the courtesy laugh.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt. But then he picks me up off the ground for a hug. I had to get on my tiptoes again. But he is smiling and moving and jogging and running it's like, oh my gosh, I think I have a warm spot, right? It's like just to see him, because it's hard, man. You look at him and you're like, that's a lot of humanity.
Yeah, he's enormous.
For guys to be moving around and we just take
and
for
to
granted.
Be athletic at that size. Yeah.
But his frame of mind, he seemed to be in a good spot.
Yeah. No, well, do you think it's just him being on the field? Like
maybe.
Yeah, just not being injured.
I mean, it's been a long road for him, and the spring is kind of, historically for him been a time where it's like he's dealing with something. but yeah, no, we talked to him, I think one of the first times out in spring, and you could tell there was a lightness about him. And he's always a guy too that, you know, when he talks, like he takes this very seriously, like the football thing. And, you know, I think he thinks pretty seriously about confidence and stuff like that. And he doesn't really hide it. So, I mean, the fact that he's, you know, manhandling you and smiling and stuff like that, I guess that's a good sign for where his head's at, maybe.
I got to go back to baseball before I get you out of here, Bruntz, just because I get varying opinions, and we've watched this thing up close. Number one, do you even have a comp for the turnaround? And number two, what in the world do you think has happened with Sears year over year?
We were talking about this in the press box on Friday of whether or not there's somebody that's had that kind of a turnaround. And I couldn't think of anybody right offhand. You know, but you look at the numbers that he had in the summer, he's just always been a guy that if he's starting, it just clicks with him more. And I mean, you know, Will and the staff, I think, has kind of had to wear it a little bit to their credit. They have that, you know, they kind of missed the mark with trying to bring him out of the bullpen as a high leverage guy last year. I mean, that's just the truth of it. And I don't know. I mean, he's got great control. The fastball, he can, you know, really locate it well. Against Ohio State, I mean, I want to say he threw in the last 3 or 4 innings. I was sitting next to the Ohio State guys that were tracking it up in the press box, and he threw something like 30 or 40% of his pitches were changeups. And to the point where it was like they were wondering if he had developed a new pitch based on what he was showing. So, I mean, he legitimately has 4 pitches that he can throw for strikes. I think he has a really good understanding of how to pitch, not just how to throw. And, yeah, I mean, the other thing that he does that I know just annoys the heck out of hitters, he works really fast.
It's unbelievable. Like, it's almost like, are you at wake or like he works quick?
Yeah, like the umpires have had to tell him a few times to calm it down and slow down. So he's on a really kind of putting together a special year. So he'll be fun to watch over the second half of the year here.